Well, welcome in, everybody, to the Saints Insider Postgame Show, live from the Caesar Superdome on a Thursday night. I am Zach Ewing, NOLA.com Saints editor, and we are here talking Saints and Jaguars. Your final score tonight on Thursday Night Football, the Jacksonville Jaguars 31, the New Orleans Saints 24. Saints fall to 3-4 on the season. For a little while, this one looked like it was going to be the same old stuff for the Saints. Bad offense, particularly in the red zone, turnovers, defense just not quite doing enough to carry the entire brunt of everything. And there was a little plot twist in the fourth quarter. Saints able to tie this game up with a furious rally, 24-24 with 6:38 to play. But then unfortunately for the hometown team, they give up a 44-yard touchdown, Trevor Lawrence to Christian Kirk, with about 3 minutes to go, and are unable to answer that. They get down to the 5-yard line in the waning minute of the game. And again, just like last week, 4 straight passes to end the game, can't get the touchdown they need, and a second straight loss and a 4th loss in their past 5 games for the Saints. So our Saints Insider postgame show, I will talk here for a few minutes. We'll take your questions and comments, show them here live on the air, and get to as many as we can. Keep that clean, please. And then a little bit later, we'll be joined right out of the Saints locker room by Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan, who will give their reaction to this one. I know it's late, so thank you for staying up with us. And I'm sure a lot of you can't go to bed anyway after something like that, because it was exciting, and then it was disappointing, and a lot of emotions in that one. So let us know how you're feeling. Drop your questions here. Saints go into a 10-day break now before their next game, which will be on Sunday, October the 29th at the Indianapolis Colts. The Saints Insider post-game coverage is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. When it comes to healthcare, choose a partner that sets the standard. Tulane Doctors are bringing the medicine of tomorrow to the Gulf South today. Find your physician at TulaneDoctors.com. Hopefully nobody needs a heart doctor after that one, but there was some exciting moments. None more so really than Derek Carr's 17-yard touchdown pass to Michael Thomas with 6:38 left, followed by a 2-point conversion to Alvin Kamara on a pass from Derek Carr that tied this game. But like I said, couldn't find the happy ending for the Saints, and that's pretty tough. Saw some comments flowing in already. Olave had me fooled. He's no number one. Trade him now while you can get value for him. I don't know about trading him, but I do think there's a problem with Chris Olave. I mean, Derek Carr, it kind of came to a head there earlier in the fourth quarter. Carr threw incomplete for Olave on a 3rd down. He was expecting Olave to run a go pattern up the right sideline. Olave kind of dropped off on the route, stopped running it, and Carr had to throw it out of bounds. There was a lot of social media comments about, Derek Carr got mad at him and threw the ball 15 yards out of, well, Derek Carr threw the ball 15 yards out of bounds because Chris Olave broke off his route, and the only thing that could have happened on that play was an interception, so Derek Carr threw it away. So he's upset with Chris Olave. Had Olave drop a ball earlier in that sequence as well. He had a couple of catches tonight, but just not enough from a guy you expect to be your number one receiver. So I agree with that comment. I mean, I think he does need to show that he's the number one receiver on this team. I think, honestly, some of the Saints' veiled comments after their loss in Houston on Sunday, you heard Alvin Kamara and Michael Thomas and Cam Jordan kind of say, Demario Davis said, kind of read between the lines that not everyone was doing what they needed to do to prepare, to study, to be on the same page. And I think some of that was directed at Chris Olave, and we certainly saw that tonight. And so Chris Olave, a true number one, I don't know about that. But I also don't know that you trade him. He's a talented guy. You need weapons in this offense, obviously. And so I think you continue to work with him. It was good to see Derek Carr and he having a more pleasant conversation later in the fourth quarter, trying to get on the same page. Of course, it didn't quite work in the end. And of course, Derek Carr, look, he's not blameless in this either. Threw a couple of balls into really tight windows that should not have been thrown. It finally cost him in the third quarter. A ball got tipped up and picked off and returned for a touchdown. That gave the Jacksonville Jaguars a 24-9 lead. Frankly, at that point, that seemed insurmountable for the Saints offense. They had only about 20 minutes left in the game at that point. Just did not seem like they were going to muster enough offense to come back from that. But the Saints pulled out some stops. And I think if you take away one positive from tonight, and I know that's hard to look at right now, and you're 3-4, and you don't want to be 3-4. You were 2-0 and now you're 3-4. It's a really bad place to be. But the Saints did rally. They did show some offensive creativity, some backbone, went forward on fourth down 6 times. A couple of those were late in the game when you had to, but they also went forward on fourth down a little bit earlier in the game, rolled the dice a little bit. Really their issue was they were 2 for 18 on third down, and that made them go for it on fourth down those 6 times. And they were 4 of 6, 4 of 5 on fourth down until that final play in the end zone where, again, Derek Carr not blameless. I think he threw a pass too quickly and too low, looking for Chris Olave on a fade pattern. And if you're going to throw a fade, you got to throw it up higher than that. I also think Olave was well covered on that play. And so that's where Carr has to, it wasn't like he was under pressure at that particular moment. Look for your second read, look for your third read. That's do or die in that situation. And so throwing the ball to Olave there, probably not his best choice. Of course, we talk about the 2 for 18 on third downs, none bigger than the play right before that. Foster Moreau wide open in the back of the end zone and dropped the ball. Carr put it on his hands. Maybe it was 6 inches, a foot, a little bit, led him too far. It wasn't right in his arms, but clearly Foster Moreau should have caught that ball. He had 2 hands on it, dropped it in the back of the end zone with nobody around him. And the Saints could have tied the game or chosen for 2 to go for the win there. There would have been about 20 seconds left at that point. The Jags would have had a chance to come back, but a 2-point conversion was a possibility there. Or if not, you play for overtime. And the Saints had a lot of momentum at that point. So Foster Moreau, had his head buried in his hands on the sideline after the game. You got to feel bad for the guy. Not that this has anything to do with the game itself, but it was the NFL's crucial catch night here. Cancer, early awareness, early detection, intercept cancer night. And Foster Moreau was diagnosed with Hodgkin's lymphoma in the offseason, had cancer. Luke Johnson wrote a fantastic story this morning about it on NOLA.com. So, Foster Moreau, a chance to be the hero, and he drops it, and his head's buried in his hands. Saw Eric McCoy and some other guys go up to him and say, try to comfort him and say, hey, it's a lot of season left. This game's not all on you. Everybody failed at certain points in this game, and so I think that's the Saints' message. So, again, this doesn't look like a defeated team to me. I mean, they showed some gumption late in that second half. I know that's not what anybody wants to hear. You never want to be down 15 points at home and be in that situation where you have to do that. But they do have a chance here. You're getting the Colts and the Bears your next 2 games. A couple of teams probably going to play backup quarterbacks. Certainly for the Colts, you'll see Gardner Minshew with Anthony Richardson out for the season. And then in 2 weeks, Justin Fields may or may not be back for the Bears. He's going to be out this week. Craig Brody with a comment. He says the issue is no creativity. I understand that point. I do. I think at times that's completely valid, particularly in the red zone. The Saints did show some creativity on offense tonight, if we're being honest. I mean, you saw some reverses. You saw some, particularly when they scored their first touchdown. It takes some creativity to put 7 offensive linemen in the game, put Colin Saunders, a defensive tackle, in the game at fullback, run Taysom Hill where he kind of fakes it up the middle and then busts to the left side. Like, I wouldn't say Pete Carmichael has not shown the ability to be creative. I just don't think he's shown it enough. I will say the Saints' drive to tie the game was clearly their best offensive sequence of the whole year. They had the Jaguars defense backpedaling, boom, 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 hit 3 big throws. I think it was Michael Thomas, then Taysom Hill, and then Michael Thomas again for the touchdown, and then Alvin Kamara for the 2-point conversion. So, they went almost 90 yards in 3 plays and then scored on the 2-point conversion. Looked terrific. So 400 yards of offense for the second straight week. Got in the end zone a couple of times this week. 2 out of 5 in the red zone. Still not good enough. But maybe just the smallest signs of hope for the Saints offense. Defense was mostly good in this game except for the very beginning. And then, of course, the 44-yard catch and run by Christian Kirk at the end that ended up being the game winner. That can't happen. Really weren't close on that play. Not sure what the miscommunication was there in the secondary, but Kirk catches that pass wide open and then really finds an open lane to the end zone without really being challenged. Mark Williams, why all the short passes? Go back to the beginning of the game. That has to do with the offensive line. I don't think you can trust this particular offensive line to protect Derek Carr for enough time to get those receivers downfield. They did take a couple of shots, the Saints did. That's where you tend to see that miscommunication from the receivers too. But when you're starting Andres Pete at left tackle for the first time in years, and you're starting Max Garcia at left guard, and you're starting a right tackle that you just called up from the practice squad. I don't know. I can see why the Saints did it, and quite frankly, it was pretty effective at times tonight. The first quarter, quite frankly, was disastrous. The Saints, they got 2 fumbles from the Jaguars. Jaguars lost fumbles on back-to-back touches. Christian Kirk lost a fumble. Saints didn't do anything with it, punted it away, and then the Jags muffed the punt, and the Saints only get a field goal out of it. So despite being +2 in turnovers, the Saints are down 14-3 at the end of a quarter. They should have been down, could have been down 21-0 at that point. And at that point, this game's over already. So it was a disastrous first quarter all the way around. Saints played better after that. Don't know that they played well enough to win. Obviously, they didn't in a 31-24 loss. So we're going to take a quick break here on the Saints Insider postgame show. When we come back, we'll talk some stats. We'll take a look ahead, and we will be joined a little bit later by Luke Johnson, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan live coming out of the Saints locker room. We'll be back right after this on the Saints Insider postgame show, brought to you by Tulane Doctors.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane Doctors. The future of medicine is here.
The Times-Picayune always gets it right. Jay's on top.
Not quite. It says here the Crusaders are the best.
I think you mean the Greenies, buddy.
These sports writers know what's up.
At least you're wearing the right colors, but we know why people read the paper. The one thing we can all agree on, we trust the Times-Picayune.
Subscribe today. Read it today. Trust it today. The Times-Picayune.
You're never gonna make the front page wearing that.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider postgame show live from the Caesars Superdome. I'm Zach Ewing, and you're watching the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. Love you all to subscribe and click the like button on our video tonight if you're watching on YouTube. If not, get on over there and check out all the videos we post on the Saints on NOLA.com YouTube channel. We've got 2 Saints Insider podcasts each week, plus pre- and post-game shows from every game, and some short videos from the locker room throughout the week from practice interviews. So Saints lose 31-24 to the Jaguars tonight. A tough one. New Orleans rallies from a 24-9 deficit. Couple of touchdowns. One that came very, very difficult. Took them, I think, 6 plays inside the 10. Taysom Hill getting the 1-yard touchdown run. And then one that came very easily. Go 90 yards in 3 plays. A 17-yard touchdown pass to Michael Thomas. A 2-point conversion to Alvin Kamara to tie the game. But ultimately, the Jaguars come back with the 44-yard touchdown pass from Trevor Lawrence to Christian Kirk, and the Saints fail inside the 10-yard line at the end of the game. This one, maybe even more frustrating than last week at the end of the game. Saints were at the 24 last week through 3 straight incompletions and then an interception on the final play of the game. This week, they get all the way to the 5 and throw 4 straight incompletions. Most painful one of those, the drop by tight end Foster Moreau on 3rd down in the back of the end zone. Patrick Bonner had a question here. Where were Jimmy Graham and Taysom Hill on the last drive? Pretty good question. Jimmy Graham did check in at one point. Taysom Hill, I believe, caught a pass earlier in the drive. But once you get down to that 5, I don't mind trying to throw a jump ball to Jimmy Graham. That's his specialty. That's what he's on this roster for. He's not the kind of guy who's going to play 50 snaps a game at this age. But you put him in that situation, goal to go, and let him make a play. That's what he's on the roster for. So I like that point. I also turned to a couple people in the press box and said, on 2nd and 3rd down, I wouldn't hate a draw play. Jacksonville thinks you're going to thinks you're going to pass, drop back like you're going to pass, and then give the ball to Alvin Kamara and see if he could run it up the gut. You had timeouts. So even though there was only less than 30 seconds left, you only get down to the 1 or 2. call a timeout, and then you're you're from the 1 or 2 yard line on 3rd or 4th down instead of back from the 5 or 6 yard line. So I don't mind. I wouldn't have minded a draw there, and maybe Alvin Kamara even gets into the end zone on a play like that. Taysom Hill, I'm afraid you put him in. Everybody just knows he's going to run it. I wouldn't have minded Taysom Hill kind of doing a little fake run and then a jump pass or something like that. I mean, yeah, get creative down there. I will say the Saints called timeout after the 2nd down play, and I really liked the play they called. They called a little rub route. It wasn't illegal. It gets Foster Moreau open in the back of the end zone. Derek Carr sees him. He releases the pass at the right time. Might have led him just 6 inches too far, but certainly a ball Foster Moreau has to catch. He can't come up with it. And then on 4th down, I did not like that play call, and I did not like the read by Carr to throw it so quickly to Chris Olave when he was covered so well. Olave really never had a chance at that ball. Your only hope there was to get a pass interference flag on Tulane. Mr. Don says Michael Thomas is a dog, but he's a possession receiver, not going to beat anyone deep. Yeah, I mean, his touchdown catch was as clutch as it gets. And it seems like that's what it takes for the Saints to get a passing touchdown these days, is for a receiver to just make an unbelievable play. I say that, and then we should have had one to Foster Moreau. They should have had one, Derek Carr to Foster Moreau on that last possession, and wouldn't have taken any superhuman effort, and instead Moreau drops it. So not trying to put this on Foster Moreau. Dennis says, trade Carmichael to Denver for 2 bags of Cheese Whiz. I don't know. Maybe Sean Payton would give Pete Carmichael a job. Sean Payton needs a defensive coordinator out there in the Mile High City. They've got their own problems. Saints have problems too. I do think some of them look like they got solved tonight. Another 400-yard offensive night. It didn't feel as empty as the 430 yards in Houston. Certainly not in the 4th quarter. Look at some stats here. Derek Carr threw 55 passes, 33 of 55 for 301 yards. 1 touchdown, 1 interception, which was obviously very costly. That was the pick 6 in the 3rd quarter. Alvin Kamara had 62 yards rushing and 91 yards receiving on 12 receptions. Certainly made his fantasy owners happy tonight, but just did not find the end zone. Taysom Hill, 5 carries, 18 yards. He had the touchdown. Michael Thomas, 3 catches for 42 yards and the touchdown. Chris Olave, 7 catches for 57 yards, but he was targeted 15 times and only with 7 catches. Luke says Olave is good, but also seems like he has an attitude problem. Yeah, I think there's a little bit of a concern there. Speaking of concerns, I'm sure the Saints had lots of them. We'll bring on Jeff Duncan now. He is live coming out of the Saints locker room here on the Saints Insider postgame show, brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Dunk, your impressions of that one?
Well, it's kind of a difficult game to read, right? I mean, the Saints were kind of dominated for 3 quarters and then made it interesting at the very end. But they know how to write a tragic ending, don't they? I mean, it ended exactly the way this season has kind of gone, with frustration, not being able to score in the red zone. But I think the Saints might have found something late in this game to give fans a glimmer of hope offensively, with Derek Carr kind of going to no huddle, calling his own plays. They found a little bit of offensive rhythm for the first time. But my big concern right now, to be honest with you, is just the lack of cohesiveness and togetherness, frankly, on this team. There's some frustration that's being shown. The leaders on this team are going to have to step up. Tyrann Mathieu just talked about them sticking together throughout this adversity. And he said that's going to be key for them here over the next few weeks, is not tearing apart as they, try and fight back from these losses.
You've got a 10-day break now before the next game in Indianapolis, and it almost kind of feels like a race to, can they figure this out before it completely falls apart? Because we keep talking about it. The schedule is there. If you do figure it out, 3-4 is not the end of the world.
Right. I mean, Jacksonville's a good team. I mean, if you go back to mid-season last year, they have one of the winningest records in the entire NFL. And you could see they're a complete team. They're well coached. They have a great quarterback. And the Saints, to their credit, rallied when it looked like they were dead on arrival in this game. But they've got so many issues offensively, especially in critical situations. 3rd down, I think they were 3 of 18 tonight. In the red zone again, struggled 2 of 5. And that's what good football teams, that's where they execute in the key situations. A lot of empty calories for the Saints. So I'm not sure right now how they get this thing back together offensively, just because there's so many things that are going wrong. The one thing I will say tonight, the storyline we all talked about, the offensive line and the new tackles, I mean, I thought they held up pretty well, all things considered.
And it's funny, the storylines going into this game were the Saints offensive line and Trevor Lawrence's knee. The Saints only gave up 1 sack, and Trevor Lawrence ran for like 50 yards. So neither one of those ended up being remotely accurate.
No, yeah, neither one of them played out that way. I thought that, the Saints, when you look at this game, they win the turnover battle 2-1. They outgain Jacksonville, and they still somehow end up losing this game. And that's the sign of a bad team, frankly. I mean, when you win all these statistical categories that normally you would win the game, that historically shows you win the game, and you still end up losing, and then you're in the locker room and we're starting to hear a lot of the same kind of tired cliches. The fans are starting to get frustrated, and they certainly showed it tonight. Lots of boos. This reminded me a lot of some of the really dark seasons that I've covered here at the Superdome, and I just worry that this could be a very long, frustrating season.
I was actually going to bring that up when it's 17-6 at halftime or 24-9 after the pick six. This is as low, as down as we've seen the Superdome in a long time.
Yeah, it's been a while. I've seen it like this when these really bad years, when the Dome can actually work against the Saints, because the fans here are so passionate, and I think have been spoiled to some degree over the last decade and a half of really brilliant football from Drew Brees and Sean Payton in that era. Very special period of time. And I think they're used to seeing excellence. And right now they're not seeing it. And they know what a good offensive football team looks like. And so they're voicing their frustration. And, tonight, right when I was driving to the game tonight, Zach, listening to WWL radio, tickets were selling for $20. That's fans telling you that they don't want to come out and see this product. And then they get here and it's frustrating the whole time. I mean, almost every third down makes you hold your breath, and even field goals now are kind of a close your eyes moment. This is not a lot of fun for people to come to home games when it used to be a big party here.
Yeah.
And so, the Saints have got to figure this thing out, and it's not going to be easy to figure out because there's a lot of things that are going wrong right now offensively.
I want to key in on a couple of things that have gone wrong, and one is Chris Olave in particular. He did have 7 catches tonight. He had 15 targets. Derek Carr was found on camera screaming at him when he peeled off on a go route in the fourth quarter. Mm-hmm. He and Carr are not on the same page. His effort is being questioned, not by the team, but social media coaches.
Yeah,
how that
right.
goes. But clearly there is some sort of disconnect for a guy who had a great rookie year, started this season with 200-yard games, looked like a star, a budding star in this league, and now is kind of caught in this maelstrom of criticism.
Yeah, look, he's putting up numbers, but it's not effective numbers, right? As far as the team when they need it the most, he really hasn't made a huge play when they've needed it in the red zone, really, and that's an area where they need to start dialing his number, I think. But I saw them with my binoculars a couple of times go at it, but then they also came back together, hashed it out. You could see them talking on the sidelines. So, sometimes you got to be careful in how you gauge a moment on the sideline, because they did spend a lot of time talking, going over the Microsoft Surface on the sidelines about what might have gone wrong there. But this is the same recurring theme we've seen where they're not on the same page. And they had a whole, session this week where guys were working extra after practice on trying to get these kind of moments down. And clearly there's still more growing pains to experience. And until they get that ironed out, it doesn't matter really who they play, Zach. It doesn't matter if they're playing the Colts without Anthony Richardson or Chicago Bears without Justin Fields. They're going to be their own worst enemy. They've got to be able to overcome that.
Yeah, as Rod Walker said on Tuesday in Saints Insider, the Saints have to fix the Saints before they can worry about anything else. And we saw that tonight. I mean, if they play a clean game, they win this game, because the Jaguars did enough to give it to them, and they didn't take it. The only other thing I was going to bring up, you mentioned Blake Grupe missing a couple of field goals, doinking an extra point that went through.
Right.
Lou Hedley, in a key moment in the game, a 39-yard punt that was a line drive and got returned for 10 yards, so very low net on that punt. Do the Saints have a problem with these rookie kickers? Is this 10-day break a sign we may see a change at one of the spots?
No, I don't think it's that drastic yet, but I think if it continues, it will be. And certainly, look, they gambled going with these two unproven commodities in the kicking game. And right now they're seeing some of the growing pains that go with that. Right now, I don't think you can feel very confident about Blake Grupe beyond, 35, 40 yards. That's just the way it is. I mean, I think he's struggling a little bit now with consistency. And really, that's kind of a microcosm of the entire team, right? Everything is inconsistent about this team. Even the defense can be inconsistent at times, as good as it is. And Derek Carr is wildly inconsistent. He was wildly inconsistent tonight. And I think that they've all got to keep getting better, somehow stay together, get some wins where they start feeling a little better about themselves and gain a little confidence. But it's just so hard to do when you've got so many things that are going wrong.
We got a comment from Brian here that says, we're seeing the beginnings of a Saints implosion. This is so great. How can you not love this? I don't know, maybe a Falcons fan in the feed or something, but I don't know if this is a slow motion train wreck where you can't look away or if the Saints are going to get it together. But they've got 10 days, again, to kind of take a break and figure this thing out.
Yeah, Tyrann Mathieu had a good point. He said, maybe need to get away for a couple days, just kind of clear their heads. And I think that wouldn't be bad because, if you were out on Airline Drive this week, and I know you and I both were, there's a lot of pressure out there. I mean, there's not a lot of people smiling. I mean, this team's losing, and it's not just that they're losing, but, they're not playing the elite teams in the league right now. I mean, Jacksonville's probably the best team they played all year, and they really trailed from start to finish. I mean, they tied the game up late, the frantic comeback, but it was short-lived. And you can just see when you watch the Cowboys, the Eagles, the 49ers of this world, the Saints aren't in that class. And they used to be in that class. And I think they aspired and really were confident they could be in that class this year. And they've got so far to go to get into that class. I think that's what Saints fans realize. Even if they do put together a couple wins here against the Colts and Bears, there's still a long way to go.
Absolutely. He's Jeff Duncan, Times-Picayune, NOLA.com columnist. You can read his work. He's got a column up already tonight about this one. And we will continue on here right after this on the Saints Insider post-game show after this word from Tulane Doctors.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane Doctors. The future of medicine is here.
The Times-Picayune always gets it right. Jay's on top.
Not quite. It says here the Crusaders are the best.
I think you mean the Greenies, buddy.
These sports writers know what's up.
At least you're wearing the right colors, but we know why people read the paper. The one thing we can all agree on, we trust the Times-Picayune.
Subscribe today. Read it today. Trust it today. The Times-Picayune.
You're never gonna make the front page wearing that.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider postgame show live here from the Caesars Superdome. Zach Ewing awaiting on Luke Johnson and Rod Walker. They'll be coming out from the Saints locker room here in the next few minutes. Had to let Jeff go finish his column, but we appreciate him stopping by with some insight. It's a frustrating night for the New Orleans Saints. It starts early on. Defense gives up a touchdown on the Jaguars' opening drive. Trevor Lawrence, game time decision whether he would play. I think we pretty much knew this morning he was going to play, but I think there was some thought. I certainly thought I picked the Jaguars to only score 10 points in this game. I thought Trevor Lawrence would be limited. I thought he would be a statue in the pocket. I thought the Saints could feast on that. Instead, Trevor Lawrence scrambled for first downs, I think 3 different times, including one on that first possession. Jaguars go right down the field and score a touchdown. It's the first time the Saints defense gave up a touchdown on the opponent's opening possession since a 39-32 victory over the Seahawks in week 5 of last year. So it's been more than an entire season, 19 games since that happened. But the Jaguars get it done. It was a 2-yard rush by Travis Etienne, the Louisiana native, getting the Jaguars on the board. That made it 7-0. Saints get the ball and, actually from the get-go moved it tonight. They got in field goal range on their first possession, stalled out. Blake Grupe misses the first of misses the field goal. It was his third straight miss, 51-yard miss, which, again, every now and then a kicker's going to miss a 50-plus yard field goal. He can't miss them all, though. He's missed 3 in a row now. Then the Jaguars get the ball back with a 7-0 lead. Pass complete to Christian Kirk. He fumbles, forced fumble by Paulson Adebo, picked up by Carl Granderson, who, continues to have a phenomenal season, ran all the way downfield, 19 yards downfield from his defensive line spot to recover that fumble. So kudos to him for that. But the Saints go 3 and out, have to punt it back to the Jaguars. Then the Jaguars muff that punt. It went off the back of the return man, Jamal Agnew. Saints recover it. And so they get the ball at the Jaguars 17 and again stall out, only get 3. They did get 1 first down, got down inside the 10, couldn't cash in. Only get the 3. It's a field goal. It's 7-3. Jaguars then get the ball back, goes 75 yards in 7 plays. Another Travis Etienne rushing touchdown, 17 yards this time. And like I said, it's 14-3 at the end of the first quarter, or actually it was 2 minutes into the second quarter, and the Saints are +2 in turnover margin and just getting blitzed at that point. I just don't know if you're a Saints fan. Like, it's Thursday night, you got to go to work tomorrow. You've been sticking around to watch this thing. I don't know if you're with us on this post-game show here at 11:23 p.m. I'm sure you're a diehard, but some of these Saints fans it's not worth my time. Saints did start to play better. They turned it over on downs on their next possession. That was the only time they failed on 4th down tonight until the final play of the game. Defense woke up at that point, forces a couple 3-and-outs. Saints do get a field goal before the end of the half, but then give up a field goal to Jacksonville, 17-6, and that was the score at halftime. Let's see. Jeremy asks, why so sluggish coming out of both sides on both sides of the ball in the dome? Doesn't make sense. It doesn't. I mean, quite frankly, such an important game. I know it's a short week, but to come out with that lack of energy, maybe it's pressing. Maybe these guys are trying too hard early in the game to make a big play, to make a big impression, to ignite the crowd, because it seemed like once they settled into the game, they actually played better. So maybe that's it, Patrick, or Jeremy, but that's a good question. Taylor says, what's it going to take for the Saints to pull the trigger and make a change at OC? And at what point do they start looking towards next year? The first question, the change at OC, I mean, I think you could see that. I know the criticism continues to rain down on Pete Carmichael. I think there has been some improvement there. I know you need to finish drives. They've gone over 400 yards the last 2 weeks. If they didn't make the change a couple weeks ago, I don't know that you make the change now. If anything, maybe you let Ronald Curry try his hand. I think Jeff Duncan brought up a good point. The Saints had success when they went hurry up and let Derek Carr call plays at the line. Maybe you do that a little bit more instead of having Carmichael script a lot. Let Derek Carr call those plays at the line more often. You can't do that the whole game. Guys are going to get tired, et cetera, et cetera. But, I think you could experiment with that some. And to your second question, at what point do you start looking towards next year? I don't think you're close to that yet. 7 games into a 17-game season, still have most of your division games left to play, 4 of the 6. You're close. We'll see what happens. I'd say if they lose to Indianapolis and Chicago, then maybe you start to do that. Then you're at the trade deadline. Maybe then you start to trade off some assets and see what you could get and build for the future. But I don't think you're there yet. And I think this team is really too talented, and they're a little too all in on this year to be in that situation. So I really don't think you're there yet on looking toward next year. Eric earlier said trade Michael Thomas, Chris Olave for multiple picks, move Carmichael back to the booth, allow Curry to call the plays. I will tell you one thing. They're not going to let Ronald Curry call the plays after they trade Michael Thomas and Chris Olave. You don't like cut off a guy's hand and tell him that it's now his time to shine. That's just putting Ronald Curry in a really bad spot. So I don't like that idea. But yeah, I get the frustration. I don't think anything is completely off the table here. Going through the second half, so 17-6 at halftime. Saints really moved the ball pretty well in the second half. Outside of a couple drives. They come out, go to 52-yard drive, 5 minutes, 11 seconds to start the second half. But again, a failure once they get into scoring position. That one didn't quite reach the red zone. Luke says, why can't this offense do anything in the first 3 quarters? Third quarter, they did move the ball a little bit. They went for the fourth down. They end up with a field goal there at 17-9. Get the ball right back. And this was really the backbreaker. Derek Carr tries to squeeze a ball into Rashid Shaheed into traffic. Shouldn't have thrown that ball. Pass gets tipped up and then intercepted and returned for a touchdown. So, it's 24-9. I think people left at that point. I really think they did. Now, the Saints responded to that. A 16-play, 75-yard, 7-minute and 26-second touchdown drive to cut the lead. It took all the way into the fourth quarter. They finally do get in the end zone. They ran 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 plays inside the 10-yard line. Finally get the touchdown run from Taysom Hill on 4th and goal from the 1 to cut it to 24-16. Get the ball back, punt it away, stop Jacksonville on 4th and 1, get the ball back again, and that's when they went 53 yards in 3 plays. Michael Thomas, Taysom Hill, Michael Thomas, boom, 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 touchdown. Alvin Kamara, 2-point conversion. Game's tied, dome's rocking. They force another Jacksonville punt. It really looks like the Saints are going to pull this thing off. Then they have to punt it away. Then they have the Derek Carr looked like he was injured. He was helped off the field. Still no sign of exactly what that was. A groin injury, maybe a bad punt from Lou Hedley. Failure on defense, 44-yard touchdown reception by Christian Kirk, and then the failure at the end. So that's it. Luke Johnson is here, Saints beat writer for the Times-Picayune and NOLA.com. I'll scoot over so he can squeeze in. Luke just coming from the Saints locker room. Luke, your thoughts on that one? Organize them into a nice, concise fashion after all of that.
Yeah. Well, I think the way I summed it up after the game was the Boo Birds won. Look, this is what we heard for the better part of 3 hours tonight. Was the Saints fans just like letting their team have it, right? It didn't matter if it was the defense giving up a pair of 75-yard touchdown drives. They got booed. Didn't matter if it was the offense doing its thing that it's done pretty much all season. They got booed. Special teams got booed for giving up a fake punt, missing a field goal. Referees got booed for calling a crucial pass interference on what was probably not a catchable ball late in the fourth quarter. Everybody got it. And for a crazy second there, it looked like the Saints were going to win that game or come close to it.
They had the ball, tie game, like 4 minutes left. They had a chance.
And I couldn't believe what I was seeing. 15 points unanswered in the fourth quarter. You're like, what? Where has this been all season long? And obviously they just couldn't get it done. You have a huge play to Christian Kirk late there in the fourth quarter. Dennis Allen said they were running a quarters coverage, and Christian Kirk just ran the right route against the right defense, beat Tyrann Mathieu, and then kind of just weaved through the Saints defense for a 44-yard touchdown. And even then, it looked like they were right in position. Ball bounces off Foster Moreau's hands in the end zone. Fourth down play. The very next play falls incomplete. Ball game. Yeah, it's just that's my short summation of this game.
A moment about Foster Moreau, because you wrote a great story about him this morning.
Yeah.
He had a chance to be the hero on a big night.
Yeah.
Had his head buried in his hands on the sideline afterward. I mean, this loss is not on him. It just goes to show you it's a team really can't afford mistakes like that, but a tough one for him.
Yeah, no, we spoke to him very briefly in the locker room. He came out, manned up, and took questions, which was not easy for him. He was absolutely distraught after that game. He feels like he let everybody down, but you're right about that. Foster Moreau, wasn't the one not doing anything with 2 turnovers, right? And or giving up 2 long touchdown drives, or missing field goals, or not covering a guy in a fake punt. There's a lot of different ways the Saints lost this game. Obviously, that's going to draw a lot of attention after the game. Ball hit him in the hands. It's a play he should have made, right? But yeah, I think the Saints, his teammates were doing their best to try to lift him up after that. Saw a lot of guys coming over to him, patting him on the back, and basically saying what you just said. There's 160 plays in that game. One of them is not going to decide any one of those plays. whether they're made or not made.
This game feels pretty similar to Sunday's in that the Saints probably did do enough to put themselves in position to win, but they don't get it done in the end. Last week it was 3 incompletions and an interception. This week it's 4 incompletions. The feeling's a little bit different to me just because they showed some actual explosiveness on offense. The defense had a part in it. How do you compare the feeling of the locker room after the 2 games?
Last week I kind of felt like last week felt like pretty close to rock bottom, and I think they're talking themselves into this week being a little bit better because of the way they finished, but it's still, it's not good.
You still buried that hole for yourself.
Yeah. They spent, like I said, they spent 2.5 hours getting booed on every possession here, right? Like everything they did was wrong. It looked like a complete system failure for this team. So yes, the fourth quarter was encouraging. It was encouraging. They ran that up-tempo offense. Derek Carr finally got something going. All that's good, but like it doesn't wash over the first 3 quarters of this game. Those were bad. They were very bad, and they were the same kind of concerning trends that we've seen throughout the first 7 weeks of the season. They have trouble scoring in the red zone. Their offense just generally cannot put together 4 good quarters of football. And it seems like it's just completely dependent upon this defense to keep them in a ball game. And if they have one leak here or there, 44-yard touchdown in the fourth quarter, it's a difference in the game. So, it's a better mood in that locker room after this week's game than it was after last week's. Last week's was really down in the dumps, but it's not good, and they've got a lot of stuff to clean up.
No, and I mean, if Sunday was rock bottom and your response to rock bottom was to come out and get your tail kicked in the first, particularly in that first quarter when the Jaguars give you the ball twice.
Once inside the 20-yard line.
And you're still down 14-3. If that's your response, I don't know what that says about this team.
The reality is and this is what we've been saying for a long time now, broken record here, banging the drum. Their offense needs to play better. It needs to play a lot better. They've got, again, way too many guys who are very good players for this to look like this. At least we think they do. So they can't continue to play like they've played for like at some point it's got to snap and they got to wake up, or they're just going to be left in the dust here.
Yeah. Did they find something on that touchdown drive to tie the game? Derek Carr it's like a no huddle. He's calling plays at the line. You can't do that for 60 minutes.
Yeah.
But is that a possible solution to this?
Yeah, I think so. Guys were talking about it after the game. I think that's what got them a little bit excited. They're like, hey, that worked. Like, obviously they can't do that. Right? But they can incorporate some concepts from that. And, I think Derek said, or at least somebody said that Derek likes that picture a little bit better when they are the aggressor and they got the foot on the gas and they are forcing the other team to react to what they're doing, as opposed to, this kind of formula they've been using where they're trying to, their first touchdown drive today was a 16-play drive, right? Like everything's hard.
7 plays inside the 10.
Yeah. I think when you're the aggressor and you're going up tempo, you're dictating the game to the defense. I think that's what they like. So, maybe we'll see some of that moving forward, but like the reality is, I think the players just have to play better. They have to play up to their ability. And, I certainly think the coaches have to be better too and get more out of these guys. And we've been saying the same thing for a long time now. So we'll see if it actually happens.
We'll end here. We talk so much about this team fixing things and being close to breaking through. And so how close are they to going the other direction? Do you see some fissures starting in that locker room where this thing could implode on it?
No, I don't think so. I think the response to Foster Moreau dropping that pass at the end of the game is encouraging to see a lot of guys going up to him and lifting him up. I think there's clearly some problems on this team with just like guys not being on the same page. We saw Derek Carr get really frustrated numerous times today, yelling in the general direction of one of his receivers. But I think, look, they've got a really, really easy schedule coming up. And we've been talking about this. Like, do you really want to pick this team against anybody right now? But, like, you could see them reeling off a couple wins here. You could see them easily beating the the Colts with Gardner Minshew and the Bears maybe without Justin Fields, and maybe stringing something together and maybe getting some positive momentum, but like they got to do it first.
Absolutely. He's Luke Johnson, the beat writer for the Times-Picayune, NOLA.com. For the Saints, you can read his game story on NOLA.com tonight. Thank you all for staying up with us. We're going to take one more break, and we'll be back. We'll see if we can find Rod Walker. Otherwise, we will wrap things up after this word from Tulane Doctors here on the Saints Insider postgame show.
We are Tulane Doctors. Physicians and scientists working side by side to advance academic medicine. We give our community access to the best possible medical remedies, developing state-of-the-art treatments to improve quality of life, address public health crises, and cure disease. All in passionate pursuit of our mission to provide inspired patient care for generations to come. Tulane Doctors. The future of medicine is here.
The Times-Picayune always gets it right. Jay's on top.
Not quite. It says here the Crusaders are the best.
I think you mean the Greenies, buddy.
These sports writers know what's up.
At least you're wearing the right colors, but we know why people read the paper. The one thing we can all agree on, we trust the Times-Picayune.
Subscribe today. Read it today. Trust it today. The Times-Picayune.
You're never gonna make the front page wearing that.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider postgame show live from the Caesars Superdome. Zach Ewing joined by Rod Walker, who's back from the Saints locker room. Rod, I asked Duncan, Luke, to try to sum this game up. Kind of hard to do in just a few words.
It's kind of what we've been seeing. I mean, this team went, 407 yards, I believe, of offense and still lost the game. The red zone issues continue. I think they were 2 for 5 tonight. They capped it off with a failure in the red zone, which was kind of fitting for this game, for this season, and everything that we've seen. So,
yeah, 3 for 18 on third down. I think we did see a little more like desperation / aggression tonight. We saw them go for it on fourth down 6 times. A couple of those were late in the game when they had to, but still went for it on fourth down earlier in the game. Saw some different play calls, saw them run some no huddle, some things that worked, and maybe some flashes of hope.
Yeah, I mean, they had some moments like they got behind, they kind of went to a hurry up, kind of up tempo, and that kind of helped with limiting Jacksonville as far as them being able to switch out personnel, and Saints were able to take advantage of that. But at the end of the day, it's still some of those same struggles that we keep seeing over and over again.
Rod, you've covered this team now for about 8 years. Is that right?
Yeah.
The end of that first quarter, I guess it was early second quarter, it's 14-3 Jacksonville. Even though the Jaguars literally have dropped the ball twice and given it back to the Saints, that had to have been the low point of. I mean, people are booing constantly. The offense doesn't look like it can do anything. The defense can't do anything. It could have, should have, would have been 21-0 Jaguars in that game, and instead, I mean, it's 14-3. It just felt like as bad as it can get there for a little while.
Yeah, I mean, I may have heard a few boos here before. I know we heard some when they played Tampa Bay, but tonight was, about as loud and boisterous as the crowd has been, and just they weren't happy about it. And talked to Derek Carr a little bit about the boos after the game, and he says he's able to block that out, and his message to the fans was basically like, we're going to get this thing turned around. I mean, he's optimistic, and I mean, this team is. You want to say they're close, but I mean, they just do so many little things, and they do all the things that bad teams do. So I don't know how close they really are.
Saints lose 31-24 to the Jacksonville Jaguars tonight on Thursday Night Football. We had just a little bit of everything: a missed field goal, a bad punt that led to the game-winning touchdown, a fake punt that was converted by Jacksonville on a scoring drive, a pick six by the defense not tackling on that last drive, Foster Moreau's drop, and just all of these little moments. So it's just one of those things. Again, it's difficult to say, is it impressive that they were that close despite all of those things, or is it just you have to lose all hope because it seems like they can never get over the hump.
I mean, I think it's impressive they fought back and, made this a game and had all of us sweating, thinking we would have to rewrite our stories. But the margin of error for this team is just so thin, and they just do all these little things, and they all stack up and end up in an L. And that's what I think I said this earlier this week. I mean, that's what bad teams do, is they find ways to win and do all the little things wrong, and that's what happened tonight.
I do want to give a shout out to Rod's kicks tonight. He's got the pink shirt and the matching shoes. We're going to show him real quick. I've just got what Robert calls my insurance salesman shoes, but Rod's got me demolished in that game. So real quick, Rod, before we end, the Saints have 10 days off, and I know Jeff said, Tyrann Matthew said, like, maybe it's a good thing for this team to just get away from everything for 2 or 3 days, take the weekend off, come back Monday, and try to fix all these little things.
Yeah, I asked several players, but I asked Michael Thomas about that specifically. Mike's a guy that, he probably doesn't even really want any days off. He wants to get right back into it. Yeah. Talk to Alvin Kamara. He said he's not going to he don't want to watch this film again at all. He wants to kind of look ahead and, kind of start focusing on the Colts. But, Alvin didn't say if they were, I asked Alvin, are y'all close? And he's like, maybe, So, that kind of tells you the mindset of this team. I mean, they're optimistic, but I think, at some point, I think they're starting to realize that, hey, we got to get it together because we only have 10 games left in this season.
Yeah, as Yogi Berra once said, it's getting late early out here. So Saints fall 31-24 to the Jacksonville Jaguars tonight. They dropped to 3-4 on the season. 4 losses in their last 5 games, and most of them in about as frustrating fashion as you could imagine. So our thanks to Luke Johnson, Jeff Duncan, and Rod Walker for stopping by. I'm Zach Ewing. Norman Powell's behind the camera. Patrick McGee is producing tonight, and we appreciate each and every one of them and each and every one of y'all for stopping by. We know it's late. We'll let you get to bed if you can sleep after that, and we'll be back
It's
Wednesday.
So late that you called him Norman Powell instead of Norman Bell.
I always do that. It's Norman Bell. Yeah, it is late. Is it midnight yet? Cinderella's not in the building yet. It's 11:43. But thank you for staying up with us. We'll be back with our regular Saints Insider podcast with Rod and Jeff and Luke and Norman Bell on Wednesday. So check that out and follow all of our coverage on NOLA.com and in the Times-Picayune. Good night, everybody.